Afternoon, everyone. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Yes. Thank you very much for a great opportunity where I can address the gathering here. And as you mentioned, basically, I come with a background of information technology where I work for roughly around 20 years. And also, I'm passionate about agriculture. So that's what makes our offering entirely unique. As you can see, technology can be applied anywhere, right? Because if you see any other industries, it could be the automobile industry, or it could be electronics industry, or it could be locomotive industries. All of them have gone through a lot of iterations and they have progressed at a lot faster pace compared to agriculture. But for some reason, agriculture has been going slow. And that's what is currently we are going through, okay, in a phase where we are trying to understand how can we accelerate the pace. And the time is just right. If you see, agriculture is one of the oldest industries. It has taken roughly around, it has been there for more than 10,000 years. And the first reference has been how exactly our ancestors used the digging stick kind of thing, which is nothing but the modern plow. And they also use the cows, right? And once we reach the 4th century, we invented the water wheel, where water could be lifted from the open wells or from the what do you call the canals or the rivers, and lifted to a slightly elevated place from where water can flow into field. And this took roughly around 10,000 years, okay, where the progression or the improvement has been quite slow. For the simple reason, there was more abundance of food and less number of people. But as we moved along, the next 300 years saw a complete lot of a complete different pace altogether. There was an introduction of tractor, and the tractor got modified into harvester where they could harvest, that could transport, that could store things. And then, of course, people started looking at what is the role of agrochemicals, because there we had the World War, and as a result, there were a lot of chemical that was left behind. And the scientists and the agronomy started looking how they can actually use it in the agriculture sector. That's when they realized some of the chemicals that were left behind can be used as a nutrients, which is urea kind of thing, and some of the chemicals that were left behind can be used as a pesticides. So that was the role of agrochemicals and all those things in the agriculture industry that took roughly around 300 years. As you can see, what we achieved in the first 10,000 years, the same thing or more than that was achieved in the next 300 years. But still there was a barrier. As we moved into last 20 plus years, we saw significant amount of improvement in a very short span of time. People came out with genetically modified systems where the yield was improved, and they said instead of spraying the pesticide, we can actually have the DNA modified that has the built-in resistance to tackle the pests and all those things. And more importantly, as they moved along, there came something called precision agriculture. Now we need to understand what is this precision agriculture all about, right? Precision, as you would understand, is nothing but how do we precisely give the required inputs. Now that required input could be either seeds, or it can be the chemicals, or it can be the water, or not necessarily the timely provision of these inputs, but also it could be the perfect quantity also. If you take a simple example, all of us are human beings who are on the call. Now tomorrow if we go to a place, imagine we go for an excursion, and at the end of that being there and traveling for maybe 3 to 4 hours, if somebody offers water, all of us will not take same amount of water based upon our background, based upon our age, and based upon our body structure and the stamina we have got and the time of the season. Definitely each one of us may take different amount of water. For somebody who has come from a hot place like Chennai or any other place, they may require less water because their body is already fine tuned to handle the excess what do you call heat. Whereas somebody who would have come from a cold place like Delhi or what do you call Himachal Pradesh or Kashmir kind of thing, they may find it very strenuous because they may not be used to that kind of things. And within that, it could also be how did we travel? If you are traveling in a very comfortable Volvo, the exertion could be different compared to going by a bullock cart or going by a bad vehicle that doesn't have proper suspension. So all of us can feel comfortable if somebody understands what is each one of our requirements. So typically what happens when you go to a place, there could be two ways. One is they can give you bottled water because that's the standard now. where some of us may take only 100 ml, some of us may take 200 ml, some of us may finish all half a liter and ask for extra bottle. But those of us who take one bottle or more than one bottle, invariably we waste some amount of water because we may not consume all the water. That is what is called systemic thing. But on the other hand, if you see in olden style, probably some 10, 15 years back, somebody would have had a glass and somebody would have had a mug and they would pour the water into the glass so that each one of us could take as much as we want. I'm sure all of you will recollect that when somebody was giving water to each one of us when we were growing at our early stages of our growth, we would finish the water, give an empty glass back because that was the value we were seeing. But if you look at the other side, that was the precision that was built into our ecosystem because people did care for the available natural resources such as water and all those things. And that was implemented in our lifetime. Now, the same thing we are trying to bring into agriculture. Rather than giving the inputs, be it chemicals or be it the water or be it the amount of quantity of the fertilizer, can we give right quantity at right time based upon the plant requirements? So we want to understand what is the plant asking for and provide the precise requirements. So that is what precision agriculture all about. That improved the profit to some people, but as we moved along, we realized there are people who are doing it at a cost. That means it was not becoming sustainable to everybody involved. That could be people who are using a bit of more chemicals so that while they are precise in one aspect of that, that means they might be precise in the irrigation management, but they are not necessarily being precise in the input management because their intention was to get more yield. So in sustainable agriculture, what we are doing is we are taking into consideration all different stakeholders. That means the stakeholder could be the one who is manufacturing the seeds, or he could be the one who is manufacturing pesticides and inputs or chemicals, fertilizers. It could be the farmer himself, right? He has to find the agriculture profitable because I'm sure you would have understood through the article that you read in the newspaper and news channels kind of thing. Farmer is under a lot of distress. And many of them have taken the wrong path of committing suicide because agriculture is not sustainable to everybody who is involved in that. But we don't hear the same news about people who are part of the agri chain. That means we don't hear a news saying that a company that has started seed manufacturing, the CEO committing suicide. A company that has been manufacturing the pesticide and fertilizer, their company CEO or their company CEO committing suicide. We don't hear a middleman committing suicide. When the onion prices goes to 100 rupees, we don't hear the consumers committing suicide because the price touch 100 rupees. But on the other hand, when the price goes to 2 rupees, we hear farmers committing suicide. So that's where the current focus is. How do you make the farming or agriculture sustainable to everybody involved, focusing purely on the farmer? So that's what we are talking about. And here I have taken about how exactly it has evolved in last 50 years to 3 years, 5 years kind of thing. As I mentioned, we started off with mechanization. When I say we, it is not cultivate my company, but it's about the industry I'm talking in general. They started off with tractors and irrigation. And what was the whole objective? How do we improve the yield, which is nothing but the productivity? And also, how do we improve the quality of the yield that we get? When you're using tractors, the harvesting could be done at right time. The plowing could be done at right time. When you're doing the proper irrigation, which is through drip irrigation, which is nothing but mechanized thing, obviously you can save a little bit of water and you can provide a bit more accurate water requirements for the plants. So that was the mechanization. Then we already spoke about the biotechnology part of that, which is hybrid and GMO. We also said protected cultivation in terms of greenhouse, polyhouse. In India, typically, we don't really worry about the protected cultivation because India is blessed with good climatic conditions, at least until last 5-10 years time. Whereas in Western countries, whether it is Netherlands or on the other side, Israel kind of things, they don't have this kind of climatic condition. So to larger extent, whatever they do it using polyhouses or greenhouses. It is nothing but a protected cultivation where the microclimate is controlled to make it very convenient for the plants to grow at the optimum level. Now in India also there are areas where people are doing polyhouse and greenhouse cultivation. But the key difference is in India, people are happy to get 2 times the yield of an open cultivation. That means if I'm a farmer who is having a grip of open field, in 1 acre, if I'm getting 20 tons of tomato, and if I move into polyhouse, I'll be very happy if I get 40 to 50 tons. Because that's what I believe as an individual farmer that I'm getting the best value. But if you look into countries like Netherlands or Israel, they're getting 10 times, not 40 tons, but they're getting 10 times of 20 tons of tomato in the open field, which is 200 tons. So that is the power of protected cultivation where multiple parameters are controlled. Then as farmers started moving towards more and more larger area, different crops and all those things, it became very interesting and important for anybody to control and understand what exactly is happening on my field. Because one has to visualize some farmers are having large field and some farmers are having small field. When you say a medium sized field between the two of them, it could be 2 to 2.5 acres. If you are taking the example of tomato, there will be roughly around 20,000 plants in 1 acre. And out of this 40,000 plants, it may not be easy for a farmer to go and visualize or check up everything. So what happens, it's all kind of gut feel based observation. So now what people did, they said, if you are looking into looking through the eyes of satellite, we will be able to identify which part of the farm is having the pest or disease problem. They said they can look through the heat signatures and find out the health of the crop. And then came the next version of that saying that let us use the drones. But the biggest problem of satellite and drone is they cannot do micromanagement. Even though people say they can monitor up to 10 meter by 10 meter, the accuracy is not that great because they collect weather-based data and based on that they build predictability models. But in between, if a farmer is performing irrigation, there is no feedback given to satellite. As a result, then prediction fails. So that's where the next thing of evolution came into picture, which is nothing but Internet of Things, where we combine information technology, we combine sensors, and we combine predictability model where the data was being fed from the satellites. So what does it really mean? We have got sensors that's at the ground level. The sensors can collect the data at multiple frequencies. When I say frequency, it could be once in every 5 or 10 minutes, or it could be once a day kind of thing. If you are looking at a crop that is not at all sensitive, like maize, probably collecting data once in every 2 or 3, 2 to 3 times a day could be good enough. Whereas if you are doing a sensitive crop such as grapes, or it can be tomato kind of thing, then perhaps collecting data once in every 30 minutes or once in every 1 hour may be good enough. But having a sensor at a ground level provides all this flexibility to you. Now, what does this sensor do? It can tell the ground realities. The ground reality could be what is the temperature in the ground, what is the moisture level, right? And how the plants are doing, because the moisture indicates the health of the crop. In agronomy, it's a very common knowledge where we know plant when it is growing, it requires good amount of water. And when you put water into the ground, some part of that will percolate depending on the soil textural class, and some part of that will evaporate. And the third part, which is most important, is going to get absorbed by the plant. So we need to make sure that whatever water is absorbed and evaporated is getting replenished by the artificial means. So how do we do that artificial means? We will be using sensors to tell us how much of water has been evaporated, and using automated systems, we'll be able to replenish that. So that's what, as you can see, last 2 points, okay, one is computer vision and second one is IoT. They're all IoT based systems to a larger extent compared to the first 3 things, okay. So that has been the difference between first 50 years versus last 5 years, okay, where technology has significantly impacted the yield and productivity, yield and quality. As you can see, the Internet of Things has started giving more results in Indian farmers. Whereas if you look into the Western side, they are already at the protected cultivation, and since they cannot do in open cultivation, they did not focus more on that. But now they are also looking into these technologies. So here I have given just some examples of how exactly different technologies can be leveraged. On the left-hand side corner, you are looking at drone. I'm sure all of you would have heard, and some of you may have used the drone also for one of the reasons. This is basically to get the picture of the field, which can get converted into data. And the data is going to tell you different stories. Some data could tell where there are problems in the field in terms of the crop not performing, or it can be used, okay, where you take a photograph and analyze what is the yield. Or some of the drones are there where they claim that you can actually use it for spraying the pesticides. Because if you are looking at a small farm of maybe 1.5 acre, this will not be a viable option. But if you are looking at a place which is having 20 acres or 50 acre kind of thing, this makes a very good case study. Where in that, if there is a small patch, where through satellite, if you are able to find out that there is a pest and disease occurrence, you can use a drone to go and spray it, or alternatively, you can use the drone to fly on the field to observe where are the problem points and directly go to the problem points and perform the management activities. And on the right side corner, you are seeing basically what you call robotic arm that has got vision. So that can actually look into the lettuce. As you can see, it has plucked one lettuce leaf, lettuce head actually. So the whole idea is basically rather than engaging human beings, can they look at using these robotic things? The advantage, they work round the clock and the quality is going to be consistent. The moment you specify lettuce has to be of this size and of this color, invariably, no matter what happens, they're going to stick to that, right? So that's the beauty of this system. And on the left-hand side corner, left corner, but bottom corner, you see basically hydroponics. So where the growing is being done under artificial lights. As I said, in India, we are blessed because we have got sunlight that covers all this different spectrum of light. But in a Western countries like Netherlands and all, where they don't have sunlight for a period of almost 6 months, they use these artificial lights. As you can see, they have got LED lights, okay, that can emit different kind of spectrum of lights, which is going to understand, which is going to change according to the age of the plant and emit different light, enabling them to grow well. And the right hand side is the indication of basically all these technologies can be combined to get better yield. Now I will tell what exactly is the problem in our Indian context, right? In India, we have this attitude of chalta. It's okay, we can get it. Our people think they know very well. They're already doing very well. But unfortunately, we were the leaders in the world in agriculture space. But in last few years, we are slowly slipping from that spot. There are references where when some scientists from Europe and all those things visited India way back in 1940s, they said they need to salute our Indian farmers because they have understood sustainable farming without using any chemicals. But unfortunately, now we are trying to learn it from them. For the simple reason, our farmers are finding it is very difficult to make profit, right? Why are they not able to make profit when other people are able to make profit? Because we don't work with the data. We always work with the gut feel. As a result, we lose probable revenue. If you are looking into simple crop like paddy, which is not at all a heavy, a good commercial crop, and an average in some places like Maharashtra and all those things, farmers are losing almost up to 60,000 rupees per year per hectare, right? If you look into crops like banana, pomegranate, grapes, and all those things, these losses are much more higher. Because on an average, a banana farmer will get a revenue of roughly around 3 to 3.5 lakh rupees per year. Now, instead of getting 100% potential, if he is just getting 60 to 70% and making 3 lakh rupees, you can imagine roughly he is losing 30% of the additional revenue that he could have made. So that shoots up to roughly around 60 to 90,000 rupees per acre. And if you translate that to per hectare, it's going to be roughly around 2.5 lakh rupees. So this is one area where we can help the farmers. On the other hand, besides losing the revenue, they're also consuming more water. As you can see here, this is compared with different states where the water consumption varies drastically for paddy. We are doing a project with Punjab farmers. We realize basically they are consuming more than 42% extra water. Now, I'm not talking about half liter, 1 liter here, because as I took the earlier example, if we are all going for an excursion, at the end of that, even if we waste 1 liter, all some 30, 40 of us, it will lead to only 40 liters of water. Whereas in case of a farmer growing paddy, each acre will take roughly around 1 crore liters of paddy to grow in 1 acre per year. So the amount is huge. And when you talk about around 40% water, that translates to 40 lakh liters. And you can imagine how many families can actually manage their livelihood in urban areas with that 40 lakh. That means only one farmer, only 1 acre rather than one farmer. In Punjab, we have got 30 lakh hectares of land being farmed under tubal irrigation. So any opportunity where we can save water has got a significant impact. Punjab is not an exception. We have got similar scenario in Andhra Pradesh also, where we did a project and demonstrated roughly around 62% water can be saved, while the productivity improves by roughly around 13%. So that's what we are talking here with various crops. And this, as I mentioned earlier, if you are looking into horticulture crops, the losses are much more higher. So farmers can be much more profitable if they look into more of data-driven agriculture. And of course, the water may not be to the same extent of 50% like in paddy kind of thing. Here, water is going to be less required. And these are the typical challenges, right? This is probably already covered in these things. Farmer depends on the weather. While we are sitting here in this conference, we are all sitting in a very comfortable space. We know how to leverage on technology, right? We are all sitting under fans at the comfort of our houses. And if it rains, all we need to do is close the windows. If I feel very hot, all I need to do is turn the fan or AC on. Whereas when a farmer is doing, invariably it is in exposed condition. And when it rains, definitely he's going to lose the revenue, lose the crop. And when it gets hot, invariably there's going to be a problem. So typically he has got many challenges. Some of them cannot be controlled. Some of them he'll be able to manage. That's what the challenge is. Now, among those what he can manage, some of them are not being well managed, which is water management, which is what we discussed earlier. So they are using more water. As a result, the yield is less. And also because they are not using the water properly, the pest and disease occurrences are higher. Crop is not at all healthy. When it's not healthy, it takes more pest and diseases. And the biggest challenge is it is something like farmers are using water as if there is no end to that. So they're not realizing there is an end of that. And probably if they continue to use the same way, there are articles that are surfacing in Punjab. They say by 2030, Punjab could be a desert. I'm sure we don't want to see that. So that is where the technology can actually help them. Now I will come into Cultivate. What does Cultivate do? We are a technology company. We provide IoT and artificial intelligence based smart irrigation solution. What it essentially means is we don't provide water unless otherwise plants ask for that, right? It's a simple thing. Instead of giving water to any one of us, if somebody asks, do you need water? And provide water only when we say yes, then the problem is solved. So that's what we do. So we ask the plants in an indirect way through the soil moisture sensor saying that do you need water? And once we understand the water is being asked for, we provide water until they say yes, I'm done with that. In Indian condition, we know electricity is not always available. So as a result, we check okay whether electricity is available or not. And when there is no electricity, we continue to check whether the water is still required after the electricity has resumed. Because the challenge could be maybe it is 2 in the afternoon that the plants are asking for water, but at 4 o'clock it has rained, and at 6 o'clock we have got the power. So I don't want to start the system automatically because my plants requested for water at 2 in the afternoon. We ask for them continuously till the water is available. These are the solutions that we are offering. For crops like paddy, sugarcane, tobacco kind of thing, we have got smart irrigation advisory. When I say advisory, basically we ask the crop what do they want, when do they want need water, and when they say they need water, we send a irrigation advisory to farmer on his mobile. So we send a message to farmer saying that please start irrigation because your crops are asking for water in this particular field. Now, if the farmer does not start irrigation, we get a feedback from the sensor saying that irrigation hasn't started. Now, there could be many reasons for that. One reason could be farmer forgot to see the message, quite possible. Second one, his phone is damaged. Third one, there is no electricity. Fifth one, everything is fine, but there is a problem with the pump. So what we do is, if we don't get the response back within 8 hours time, we automatically dial through using the interactive voice response system. Everything is automated. So the way it works is the farmer gets a SMS, and if it does not act on that within 8 hours, then automated call will go to him saying that, boss, I sent a message to you requesting for irrigation to this particular field. It appears you're not done. Please press 1 if you're done. Please press 2 if you're not done. And if he presses 1, we understand there's a problem with the sensor and we say, thank you, we'll look into that. If he presses 2 because he did not do irrigation, then we'll ask him what was the problem. Did you have problem with the pump? Or did you have problem with the current? Like many questions. So ultimately we get to understand whether he irrigated or not, and if not, what was the reason. So then we take a corrective action. And for high value crops, rather than asking farmer to irrigate, we directly connect with the pump. So our system will automatically turn the pump on and off according to the requirements. And for ultra high value crops such as floriculture, exotic vegetables that are grown in polyhouses or greenhouses, we have got irrigation management as well in that. Besides the smart irrigation. This is the architecture we have built. As I said, since IoT has been introduced in India roughly around 4 or 5 years back, we were the first one to bring the agriculture IoT into agriculture, where two-way communication can happen. So we have got sensors at the ground level, and the sensors will collect the data. And once they collect the data, it will push into the communication layer where you are seeing it as gateway. And the gateway is going to verify, validate, and push it to the the cloud layer. And in the cloud, we have got different activities. One could be the analytics to see whether the crop requires water or not, or it could be to send it to the management of some customers or some clients where they want to see the data visualization, like what is happening, irrigation is happening or not, and how much of irrigation has happened, what is the amount of water that has been saved, kind of thing. Or it could be just archiving for different reasons, or it could be interfacing with other things. Now, after the data is analyzed, if there is a need for the system to come back, it will come back to the communication layer. Then it will go back to the on-field layer telling, yes, this is the activity you need to do. And we have got solenoid valves which are wireless and battery operated that they are going to turn on and off, right? Now, next couple of slides, I'm going to be talking about the success stories that we have got. As I mentioned earlier, with the paddy, we have saved roughly around 45% of water. If you're looking at Punjab specific, it has been 42%. And there is the 12% quality improvement, right? And as you can see, I'll run this. Okay, there's a PDF, it's not happening, yeah. So we started our first project with Mandya farmers. And from there, we expanded it to Punjab, where we did our project with roughly around 50 farmers. And we got fantastic results. Now, currently, we are talking with this Punjab government and to expand this to roughly around 10,000 hectares of land. Because Punjab, around 73% of the farmers are using tube-well-based irrigation. When we say tube-well, it's a borewell. As a result, Punjab is spending roughly around 6,300 crores per year to subsidize the electricity for farmers. Now, when we started this journey, we did not look into the electricity saving. Our focus was how do we improve the yield for the farmer and how do we save water. Suddenly, we realized there are two categories of farmers who are doing tube-well-based irrigation. Around 80 to 85% of the farmers are having electricity, so government can save money. And around 10 to 15% of the farmers are using diesel-based irrigation. They have got the pump sets. So for those farmers, it's a direct saving because they need to buy diesel. Towards the end of this, another 5 minutes, I'm going to show you a video that shows what we have done in Punjab. So this is the illustration of how it has been done. I thought I'll share with you how exactly sensors can be built. Like our sensor is a smart sensor, which is buried into the ground to a depth of 15 centimeter. And at 15 centimeter, it will sense whether moisture is there or not, and if the moisture is right or not. When the moisture is below required threshold, it will automatically send a message to farmer. And once the farmer turns the pump on, because paddy is a flood irrigation, once it reaches 5 centimeters above the ground, the system automatically sends a message farmer asking to turn it off. So this is an IP pending invention that we have done, which is very well received and appreciated by people. Similarly, this is another example of banana, where you can see up to around 18% yield enhancement, around 12% quality improvement. Banana, typically a farmer grows around 1,200 plants in 1 acre, and they make around 3.5 lakh rupees per year per acre. Now, if you see 3 lakh rupees, 18% yield enhancement plus 12% quality enhancement is a good amount of money for them. Because roughly around, if you take even 20%, we are helping them to make around 60,000 rupees per year per acre additional revenue. What is the additional investment? They may have to invest roughly around 30,000 rupees on our devices. So a farmer invests 30,000 rupees, the devices that you are seeing in the second and for all three pictures, and he gets a return of 60,000 rupees in first year itself. That's what we call it as sustainable. And this is the project that we have done at ITC, where we are working with tobacco farmers. And here ITC verified and validated to confirm to us, saying that farmers were able to get roughly around 43,329 rupees per hectare additional revenue. And more importantly, there was a good amount of water saving, which was around 67%, and there was yield enhancement. All we did here was, once we understood the soil textural class is sandy, we said rather than allowing the farmers to irrigate once in every 3 or 4 days, Our sensors provided water more than once a day. Because as you can imagine, when you're pouring water on a sand, it percolates down. And farmers cannot keep going to the field in 10, 20 acres of area and keep turning the walls on and off. So what they used to do is they would run the water in one field one full day and move on to the next field on the second day. They were thinking because they are flooding the field or they were providing one full day irrigation or 4 hours of irrigation, the plants have got adequate water. But because it's a sandy soil, water was percolating deep into the ground, leaving behind chloride contents. And what was the result? The tobacco that was being grown was not of great quality. Farmers were not able to sell at a higher price to ITC. So once we put our solution there, the system automatically understood how much water they have to give. It reduced roughly around 67% at its best and provided water once or more than once a day. And you can see the results. I'll skip this tobacco thing. And this we have discussed basically agronomical aspects of that, the mechanization. So these are different opportunities, okay, where one can look into what is the role of technology in agriculture, right? It could be the water requirements as we are doing. Different people are looking at nutrition management, and different people are looking at adherences like certification process, and different people are looking how exactly you can increase the pollination rate. How do you time the flowering and fruit setting, okay, at right time, so that harvesting can be managed. There are some people who are doing this honey cultivation. And what they are doing is rather than doing a typical cultivation, they take honeys and let them suck the nectar from different kind of fruits. So if you take honeys to a mango orchard, obviously the honey nectar that comes okay will be having the mango flavor. So is it artificial? Definitely not. It's all completely natural. And they are making a great thing, okay, because the flavors are different. Similarly, people, when they take it to strawberry thing, the flavors automatically change. So there are some of the great inventions, innovation that they have done. In terms of mechanization, there are a lot of things that has happened right from the land preparation, or it could be pit making, or it could be trench making, the plowing, raised beds, all those things, transplanting. Somebody in Davangere that I know, not Davangere, the Bhadravati, I think, they have done a small machine that can actually take the paddy from trace and put it to the field. So that saves a lot of labor intervention. And prominently because a lot more data is available for the systems to analyze through the satellites as well as drone and the sensors, a lot more artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms are evolved. And of course, the biggest advantage is somebody can monitor 24/7 because crops are crops. When the early stages, when the crop is, for example, when you are raising the nursery, you need to manage the crops properly at right timing and right humidity, temperature, and all those things. If you are having this sensors, definitely it can be managed in product cultivation better, right? I will run a small video that's going to show our work at Punjab. Please confirm to me if you are able to hear the audio.
Yes, yes, sir. We are
Punjab's
able to hear
distinction
you.
of being the highest producer of rice in the country has come at a huge cost. Water tables in the state have fallen dramatically as farmers need large quantities of groundwater to grow rice.
ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅੱਜ ਤੋਂ 60 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਪਾਣੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਨੇੜੇ ਸੀ ਜਦ ਦਾ ਝੋਨਾ ਲੱਗਣ ਲੱਗ ਗਿਆ ਪਾਣੀ ਦੀ ਸਤਹ ਥੱਲੇ ਨੂੰ ਡੂੰਘੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਮੁਕਾਬਲੇ ਇੱਕ ਬਾਕੀ ਫਸਲ ਦੇ ਰੇਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਮਜਬੂਰ ਕਰਕੇ ਜ਼ਿਮੀਂਦਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਝੋਨਾ ਲਾਉਣਾ ਪੈ ਰਿਹਾ
ਅਨੁਮਾਨ ਲਾਇਆ 2030 ਜਾਂ 35 ਤੱਕ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਮੇਂ 'ਚ ਰੇਗਿਸਤਾਨ ਬਣ ਜਾਊਗਾ ਜ਼ਿਮੀਂਦਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਦਿਖਦੀ ਆ ਪਰ ਜ਼ਿਮੀਂਦਾਰ ਕੋਲ ਹੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਜੇ ਹੱਲ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਦੱਸਣ ਵਾਲਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਕੀ ਹੱਲ ਹੈ
CIPT is a not-for-profit organization working closely with farmers in Punjab. As saving water is finally getting the attention it deserves, solutions are coming from unexpected partnerships.
Wilgrow is an incubator that works with social enterprises which use innovation and market-based models to tackle some of India's toughest challenges. Cultivate is based in Bangalore and CIPT works in Punjab. You know, this partnership began almost a year ago at a meeting that was organized by Hindustan Unilever Foundation and Wilgrow to discover and support technologies that can create sustainable and lasting impact in the use of water in agriculture.
when we started working with CAPT, they had one simple requirement. How do we provide a sensor to farmers to understand when should they start irrigation for the crops?
What is unique is a startup getting an insight from what the NGO partner is doing on the ground, going back and adapting their offering such that it perfectly meets what the partner wants. And that is what happened here.
What started off as a smooth journey hit a massive roadblock as the pandemic struck.
So we have to go back to drawing board to redesign the product at least 3-4 times. But ultimately, we were able to come out with a prototype.
ਇਸ ਲੋਕਡਾਊਨ ਦੇ ਪੀਰੀਅਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਪਾਰਟਸ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਤੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਥਾਂ ਤੇ ਅਸੈਂਬਲ ਕਰਕੇ ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚਾਇਆ.
Cultivator was able to understand CIPT's work and converted this into a redesigned product. They made it more affordable such that it can be deployed at scale and farmers can easily use it.
Cultivate developed a static sensor that measures soil moisture level and sends data in real time every 30 minutes to cloud servers. When moisture levels drop in the soil, the farmer receives a message to irrigate his fields. Once soil moisture reaches the appropriate level, another message goes to the farmer to stop his pump. This precise advice to farmers allows them to let fields dry up and flood alternatively, thus saving 50% of water.
ਇੱਕ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਡਾ ਡੀਜ਼ਲ ਦੀ ਬਚਤ ਆ ਜੀ, ਸਾਨੂੰ 200 ਲੀਟਰ ਲੱਗ ਜਾਂਦਾ 1 ਏਕੜ ਦਾ 1 ਕਿੱਲੇ ਦਾ ਜੀ। ਹੁਣ ਸਾਡਾ 20-25 ਲੀਟਰ ਦਾ ਸੀਜ਼ਨ 'ਚ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ। ਪਾਣੀ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਚਤ ਆ ਜੀ, ਡੀਜ਼ਲ ਦੀ ਬਚਤ ਆ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਜੀ ਬਚਤ ਆ।
ਮੁੜ ਕੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਹੋਰ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਲੈਂਦੇ, ਘਾਹ ਕੱਢ ਲਿਆ ਜਾਂ ਵੱਟਾਂ ਵੱਢ ਲਈਆਂ, ਖਾਦ ਪਾ ਲਈ, ਹਰ ਟਾਈਮ ਬਚਤ ਹੋ ਗਈ, ਪਾਣੀ ਦੀ ਬਚਤ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਤੇ ਫਸਲ ਵੀ ਵਧੀਆ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਸਾਡੀ। ਮੇਰਾ ਇੱਕ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਦਾ 2 ਕਿੱਲਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੰਨਾ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਤੇ ਸਪਰੇਅ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਦਾ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ, ਤਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਵਰਤਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪਾਣੀ ਦੀ ਘਾਟ ਕਾਰਨ ਮੁਸ਼ੱਕਤ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਤੇ ਨਿਜਾਤ ਪਾਇਆ ਜਾ ਸਕੇ ਤੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਕੁਆਲਿਟੀ ਤੇ ਕੁਆਂਟੀਟੀ ਦਾ ਫਸਲ ਨੂੰ ਉਗਾਇਆ ਜਾ ਸਕੇ।
ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਉਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਆਦੀ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਆ, ਸੈਂਸਰ ਦੇ ਹੁਣ ਆਦੀ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਸੈਂਸਰ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਬਿਨਾਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਕਹੇ ਉਹ ਸੈਂਸਰ ਦੀ ਵਰਤੋਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ।
Started off with a 50 farmer trial. Second product is roughly around 1,000 farmers where they are using around 200 handheld sensors. Now, both the products put together, we are looking at how do we scale it up to say 10,000 farmers or 50,000 farmers. So I'm 100% sure this wouldn't have happened if Wilgrow had not connected Cultivate and CAPT together.
Our experience for the last 6 months in this pilot reaffirms that finding an exciting new technology and a great entrepreneur and then funding them for growth is not enough when it comes to solving for challenges like water use in agriculture. I'm really excited to see unlikely partners like CIPT and Cultivate come together to solve for these issues and create a greater good and a higher level of impact. This is just the beginning.
That's all I had for today. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to take questions.
Yeah. Thank you. Now we'll go to the next phase, that is the question and answer session. So there are few questions which students have just raised. That is regarding the government support. What government support do organizations receive for manufacturing such products?
I'm really happy this question is being asked because as a startup, we were also looking for a lot of support from government. And I was pleasantly surprised, okay, at least in last 5-6 years, there has been fantastic support. So far, we have got roughly around 1.5 crore rupees of support from government through grants. So when I say grant,
Okay.
even this Wilgrow program, okay, it has given significant amount of grants. Government of Karnataka has given grant. Government of India has given grant. Indian Institute of Management have given grant. All you need to do is, you need to have an idea. Work on the...
Mallesh sir, I'm sorry to interrupt. Sir, your volume is coming very less. Could you speak a little louder or maybe near to the mic, sir? Earlier, your volume was fine. Right now, it's quite less.
I don't know what has happened because nothing has changed. What do you call plans, grants and all those things. We need to keep looking out for various grants. For example, there are grants like BIRAC, BIRAC. So if you just look into government grants, you will find some 10-15 kind of schemes which will support many things. It could be a simple idea that you have got where you want to go to the next level. or it could be an idea you have got, but you want to move into the prototyping, or you might be having a product with you, but you don't know how to take it to the proof of concept kind of thing. So government has got fantastic support to all these things. And when I say support, I'm not talking about some 10,000, 20,000. It all runs into lakhs of rupees. There are very fine process, and it's a very transparent process. You need to apply for that, qualify through that, and get the grants. It is available both at state level as well as central level.
Okay, thank you, sir. So the next question is regarding adoption of farmers technology. How do are farmers really looking forward for adopting such advanced products, because they are all not used to handle such products? So
Absolutely. So the way I would like to compare is, if you take the example of telephone. Telephone has been there for last 15, 20 years, and people has been using it to communicate. So if you see today's generation, they buy phones, okay, but I don't know how many of them realize whether it has got 3G, 4G, 2G, 1G, but the objective is to communicate. If you take a 5G phone and give it to a villager, he may use it for communication, which is talking on the phone for the first thing. Second one could be for WhatsApp or for Facebook or watching a movie or any of those things. Barring one or two exceptions, okay, to larger extent, people are kind of not necessarily getting affected by these things. So when we go to a farmer, we will not tell him, okay, this is a very advanced technology. Because what is he looking for? He has got a problem on hand, which is how to improve the productivity and how can he improve more profit, get more profit. So as a result, when we pitch to farmer, we will tell him, look, there is a technology which is nothing but it's going to work with your irrigation management systems. You need to make an investment, and once you make an investment, you are going to get this kind of returns. But definitely farmers are not going to buy that because they have been burnt or they have got hurt many times. So the first approach is similar to the video that you saw. We try to do a proof of concept in selected areas. We go to people, we select some progressive farmers, we work with them to establish in their village or in their local region, and let farmers see what is happening, what are the success stories, what are the challenges that it can address, and how exactly farmers are going to get benefited by additional revenue. Because what matters is, are they getting more cash in their hand than before? Once they are sure of that, definitely there is a way forward. That's what we are realizing, and that's what many companies are doing.
True, sir. Okay, sir, there's another one question from our student. He's requesting about your entrepreneurial journey, how it all started, and what are the different hurdles that you had come across, how and what are the kind of experiences? Can you please share it?
Very good question. There are two things I would like to bring here, because many times we will have an idea and we think idea is very good and we can execute that. Where we fail is to put together a team. So there have been many instances where great ideas have failed because of the bad team. On the other hand, a very good team can actually build a big idea, a best idea, and work on that. So I always had difficulty in putting together a team because there are many people in India, most of us come with different ideas, and there has always been conflict kind of thing. So that was one of my early struggles. If you see my earlier company, Purna Organics, that was the biggest roadblock I have faced. So it took me a few years to overcome that and basically start networking with people. And now, fortunately, at Cultivate, we have got a very good team. And how did I get the team? We started giving equity. Because to begin with, as a startup, we don't have money. So with a lot of difficulty, we got grants and all those things, and we put some money from our side. But when I'm trying to get a senior person, for example, a person with around 20 years of experience, I cannot go and ask him to come and join for, say, 20,000 rupees salary or 30,000 rupees salary. But instead, if I say I'm going to give him 2% equity of the company or 5% equity of the company, on top of the 20,000 rupees salary per month to cover his basic expenses, he would be happy to come on board. That's what we have done. So two key challenges that we had and that we have successfully addressed is getting a team and getting the fund.
Great, sir. Great. Wonderful.
Shrikant, sir.
Yeah, sir.
So one student has written in the chat box, sir's opinion on some of the other startups in the ecosystem,
Yes.
like Fasal, Cropin, Agrostar, and other startups there. So I don't, what is it that exactly that student wants to know? Because he was saying that they are working on similar models. So anything you would like to comment on that, sir?
Yeah. See, Cropin is a company where they are collecting data from satellite, and based on that, they're giving advisory alerts. Fuzzle also is doing something similar. The key difference between cultivate and them is we do irrigation similar to what Jain and Nedafim do at a much lower cost. And once a farmer buys our system, it's a solution. When I say solution, what it essentially means is, today imagine you're growing tomato, and after next crop, after this current crop is completed, next time you want to go for brinjal. All you need to do is tell our system saying that you are changing the crop and you are going to be entering the crop variety, and the system automatically understands what requirements and it manages. So that's the key difference. Whereas if you are comparing with the competition that you have mentioned, crop-in and Fasal and all those things, they give advisory to farmers based on the data, which is the first model that we are offering.
Okay.